Nicely on hearing about the farmers, and I'm going to talk about the reality of our members in the food industry and some of the calls that we're making as part of the Right to Food campaign that we joined after hearing Ian Byrne MP. He came along to one of our executive council meetings and was talking about this campaign that he was going to launch around the right to food, the work that he'd been doing with fans supporting food banks, and we were like, we can't not be involved. Our members make the food, so we need to make sure that they've got a voice in this. And since then we've done lots of pieces of work, but two fundamental parts of that was we conducted a survey in the early part of 2021 of our members that kind of was asking them how they were struggling, how they were coping through COVID and working, etc., etc. And we know since 2021 the economic challenges facing our members and others intensified even further, placing huge pressure on them and their families. Much like everybody in this room and all our members and our communities, our members have faced 14 years of austerity, falling wages, a pandemic, and now a cost of living crisis, because let's face it, we're still in it. It's not gone away, has it? Where inflation has surged past wages and is leaving many without the means to pay for their basic needs, such as food, such as energy and housing costs, let alone have an income to pay for things that provide happiness, and enjoyment and contentment, like a social life or recreational and family activities. Some of our members can't remember the last time they had a proper holiday. Because what's one of them? You go to work and then you're struggling to pay your bills, you don't have money to save and put away. And our 2021 survey found that the people who grow, distribute and supply our food are often unable to purchase the very food that they are producing. And we found that food workers experience food insecurity as they do not earn enough to feed themselves and their families. And this resulted in some of them depending on friends and family for food, skipping meals, eating cheap, inferior, unhealthy food, with some having to rely on food banks. And this was and continues to be an absolute disgrace and an indictment of an economy that's not working for our members and others, or for far too many people in this country. Since 2021, rather than tackle this national scandal, things have gotten much worse, and that's not going to come as a surprise with the government that we've got. The cost of living crisis, which we actually have been calling an income and earnings crisis, because it's not a cost of living, is it? It's the fact that people aren't paid enough to be able to survive, has just deepened. Inflation, as we've seen, has reached record levels. The poorest people, both in and out of work, have been disproportionately impacted by food and inflation, energy inflation, because we know that the poorest spend proportionately more of their income on both of these bills, and they're increasing at a much greater rate than overall inflation. And given that context, then we wanted to assess how our members were being impacted by the economic situation in 2023. And whilst we knew what the answers were going to be, we wanted to establish and have it there down in fact, because we've been challenged by select committees on our figures and how many people have responded, but we wanted it down in fact that if things had improved or gotten worse since 2021, and the results that we got back were unequivocal. Things have gotten much more worse for working people, and it's taken a huge toll on them and their families. We did a very similar survey to 2023 as we did in 2021 to try and draw some comparisons, and our members from all 4 nations of the UK were spoken to, and the results kind of gave us clear evidence that the cost of living crisis manifested in our members feeling food insecure and unable to heat their homes had gotten much worse in that 2-year period. The number of people relying on food banks increased from 7% to 17%. Those relying on friends and family had gone from 20 to 34%. Those eating less had gone from 35 to 57%. 80% of the respondents are now eating cheaper, unhealthier meals, and 55 have been worried about running out of food, with 45% skipping meals altogether. There's a clear reason for this, as evidenced by the 63% of our members who informed us that their wages are insufficient to meet their basic needs. and the 66% who said that their wages are insufficient to feed themselves and their family with good food. I mean, they're not even saying outstanding food, just good, decent food. In this survey, we also asked about the impact of the energy price rises, because we know not only were our members being squeezed by their employers with the terms and conditions because of their costs increasing, they were also suffering the same increases at home. And the harrowing testimonies of our members speak for themselves. The impact on people is negative, and it's significantly affecting people's physical and mental health and quality of life, especially in winter. Working people have been left unable to meet their basic needs, let alone afford any, like I mentioned earlier, any kind of social life. 88% had said they reduced their heating and their energy use. 10% said they feel cold in their own home all the time. And you know, the suffering of our members, the key workers who kept people fed during the pandemic and who continue to ensure people are fed all of the time, is a national disgrace. And it should be a national embarrassment and a scandal that food workers cannot afford the food that they grow, they produce, they distribute and supply. But it's, you know, like you were saying, other than the noise from the farmers in the last few weeks, it's just been silenced. And we believe that it's a situation that can't be allowed to continue. Things have got to change, and we're a campaigning union. We will continue to work to enhance the lives of our members, as you mentioned, and every other worker in this country, because we believe that not only should our members have good food, but everybody should have good food. And that's why we will continue to campaign for a minimum wage of at least £15 an hour, because people need to be able to afford to meet their basic needs and need and enjoyment. We will continue to campaign for a right to food, so that no child or adult goes hungry or feels food insecure in one of the richest countries in the world. Because, you know, we're facing a national food emergency. Our data and many other data studies show this to be the case. Universal free school meals and good nutritious food for all adults enshrined into right to food legislation are the principles that we will continue to fight and campaign for. And we're proud to have initiated the Food and Work Network, which if you have not seen or heard about, we do have a website, and it's a group of trade unions, academics, third sector organisations, charities, NGOs that are just coming together, because it's no good just knowing how bad things are, but we need to look at what steps and measures we can put in place to change things. And we've looked at all sorts of food banks and how they could be better, to worker cooperatives and community kitchens and all sorts and everything, and there's loads of rich resources on the website. And we've got to keep developing that, you know, and building upon that, making the arguments for the right to food and for people to have sufficient income so they can eat well, heat their homes, enjoy fulfilled, contented lives. Because I think that feeding that into like the climate work that we're doing as well, if people think that they can't afford to be involved in something because they're so stressed out that they're not eating and they're not paying the bills, then they switch off from everything, don't they? It becomes too overwhelming. Where if we can get to a point where people understand why they're in the position that they're in, and it comes back to political education and talking to people about the issues that they face, they're more likely to have the mind space to be able to go, yeah, this is terrible, this is happening to us, I want to get involved and I want to change it. We also need to make sure that workers have got security and protection in their workplaces, you know, and that includes, as was mentioned this morning, repealing Tory anti-union legislation, increase the rate of sick pay, and fundamentally curb the excess profits of supermarkets and energy companies, because we know a lot of the issues that our members are facing in the farming side and the agricultural side of the sector is the power of supermarkets driving down costs. I'm not going to do all that, don't worry, because I know I'm nearly at time, but you know, I sat in Parliament at a select committee at the beginning of the year, and I was talking about the fact that one of our sites lost a contract to a supermarket that was worth £76 million because they wouldn't knock 2 pence off a loaf, so they gave it to somebody else. That shut a factory down. 2 pence, which doesn't sound a lot, does it, for a loaf, but if you're making 2 million loaves a day, that's a lot of money. And the farmers that were there giving evidence were saying exactly the same things. Abattoirs are closing because of supermarket pressure on keeping things as cheap as possible. Orchards are closing at an alarming rate because of the pressure of supermarkets to do it as cheaply as possible. And that is fundamentally something that's got to change as well. Nobody should be getting driven to food banks. You know, nobody should be being moved out of workplaces because an employer's made bad decisions, shut a company down, gone into administration and opened up under another name. It's all things that we've got to change. We need radical, fundamental change in our food sector, but that also comes with legislation changes too. Thank you.